All right, so one of my subscribers, I can't remember which video it was I did, but one of my subscribers mentioned Chris Broussard's top offensive players list, of players that he's ever seen. All right, so that would mean players that he grew up watching. So this would omit players like George Mikan, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, even Oscar. You know, that would omit guys like that. And I'm assuming, Chris Broussard's older than I am, so I would assume this would mean more players that came of age in the late 70s going into the 80s and beyond. So that's how I would assume that. But there are some glaring omissions from his list, and I have some questions about something. Now, this is his list. This is his opinion, and I don't question any of that. That's not any, that's his opinion. But there's just some things to me that are a little bit weird about his list. Now, like I said, it's players that were in his era and since then. But the first omission to me that doesn't make sense is, where are the guys like Dominique Wilkins and Bernard King? I mean, Dominique Wilkins, all right, won the scoring title in 85, 86. You can make the argument, and it's a big if Michael Jordan didn't get injured that year, he might have won the scoring title that year. His rookie year, he averaged 28.2 points per game, and it stands to reason, if you look at what he did in 87, averaging 37, Wilkins averaged 30.3. Maybe Jordan would do a little bit better than that, But still, Wilkins won the scoring title. There were many years when Wilkins was bridesmaid to Jordan when it came to scoring. He was second or third in the NBA. It was always him. It was always Jordan, him, or Karl Malone, who were amongst the leaders. And Dominique Wilkins was a human highlight film, all right? Dominique Wilkins actually left the NBA a couple of years, played overseas. So his final point total, which I think is over 26,000 points, probably been a little bit higher if he was able to play in the NBA a couple more years. The years that he actually went overseas for a couple of years. So, but he was an explosive scorer. Most people just think of him as a dunker, but over time he, refined his game and became a very good outside shooter. He wasn't goddamn Ray Allen, but over time he became a good mid-range shooter, and he's one of the few players to successfully come back, and one of the first players, I think, to successfully come back from a Achilles tendon injury. Now that I think about it, I think he's the first NBA player to successfully come back from a ruptured Achilles tendon. He was a little bit more grounded. But even before that, he was starting to lose a little bit of his athleticism. I remember that 1991 All-Star game where he spazzed a dunk. A dunk that normally he would, tomahawk down, he spazzed. So even then, as he was 31 years old, he was starting to show his age just a tad bit. But Dominique Wilkins. Number two, where's Bernard King? This is a guy, Larry Bird. I believe Larry Bird said something like, when he was at his best, he was the hardest player for him to guard. Bernard King, before he suffered that injury against the Kings, and I think it was in March of 1985, which took him, 5 to 6 years to really come back from, and ultimately injuries derailed his career. But this was a guy, Bernard King, that was the premier scorer in the NBA when he was with the New York Knicks. 32.9 points per game in the 84-85 campaign. This is a guy who was explosive, was a fast break demon, one of the best low post scorers of all time. In his earlier incarnation, um, the degree of difficulty of some of the shots that he had down low were incredible. Had a lightning quick release, and when he came back and he was older, a little bit slower, more grounded, he developed a very consistent mid range jumper. Maybe became a little bit more of a shot jacker. I mean, but look, he was older. Perimeter shooters aren't as accurate, but there were nights when Bernard King, when he was with the Washington Bullets, now Wizards, he looked like Bernard. Just a different type of Bernard attack. But I remember in the 90-91 campaign, man, he averaged 28 points a game. I think he was, 90-91. He was either second or third in the NBA in scoring. Jordan led the NBA 31.5 points per game. I think King was second behind Jordan. I think he was second. So this is a guy who was able to come back from a devastating knee injury and become an all-star again. All right. Another omission I didn't see. Where is Alex English? Alex English scored 25,613 points in his NBA career. All right. Won the 1982-83 NBA scoring title. 28.4 points per game. All right. Wasn't the flashiest scorer. All right. But had one of the best mid-range games in NBA history. And he's the all-time leading scorer for the 1980s. Now, I love Julius Erving. Okay? But scoring... Now, how can I say this? Julius Erving wasn't a selfish player. He was a great player. Great athletic player. But Irving didn't have, in my opinion, this is my opinion, he didn't have a killer scoring mentality. Now, he did score a lot when he was with the ABA because he had to. In the NBA, in his 11-year career, he scored 18,000 points. When you include the ABA, he scored 30,000 points. So it makes sense to include him, I guess, in the scoring list because of just the sheer amount of points he scored in his career. But the NBA version of Julius Erving, to me, is different from the ABA version. He was more team-orientated. I think he kind of held back his game. All right? He kind of held back to fit into the NBA. And it goes to show you that his career high in the NBA was 45 points. He never even crossed the 50-point plateau in the NBA because he had superior teammates in the NBA, and he was a team-orientated guy. But he didn't have the killer scoring mentality unless it was in certain situations, and then Dr. J emerged. But for the most part, in the NBA, he kind of held back a little bit. That's just my opinion, okay? Not to say he don't belong on this list, but my thing, if you put Julius Erving on this list, then where's the second leading scorer in NBA history? Karl Malone. Now, Karl Malone may not have been the best pure scorer with all these array of moves, but his durability, his strength, his explosiveness, his speed earlier in his career, and his hustle allowed him to score 36,928 points over a 19-year career. And had it not been for the death of his grandmother, which greatly reduced his desire to continue playing basketball, he probably would have overtaken Kareem Abdul-Jabbar because he said that was earlier a goal of his. But I think it was the death of his No, I think it was the death of his grandmother. I take that back. The death of his grandmother, I think it was, which reduced his love for the game, and he retired. But a guy that scores 36,928 points should at least be in your honorable mentions, right? You know, so those are some guys that I thought should have been on his list. And one other guy that I think deserves to be up there is, if you're talking about scorers from the 70s into the 80s and 90s, where's Adrian Dantley? Because like the 80s is kind of has a lot of omissions. Adrian Dantley, a guy who won a scoring title twice, 1980-81 season, 1983-84 season, was one of the best scorers in the NBA when he was with Utah Jazz. Was a guy who was 6'5". He was a forward, but he could post up 7-footers, could score down low, had a weird game. He kind of was James Harden a little bit. It was, he had a knack for getting to the foul line. Oftentimes, there were some seasons where he made more free throws than actually had field goals. I think in today's NBA, man, he would set records for free throws. Like he had a better knack to get to the foul line than even James Harden, in my opinion, at least. Back when it was harder to get foul calls, and he could shoot. He was very efficient. He shot 52 to 57% from the floor in his prime. He developed a dependable mid-range jump shot. And like I said, Adrian Dantley belongs on this list. Scored 23,000 points in his career. So that's my take on Chris Broussard's list. I just would have added those guys in there as well, at least for honorable mentions. He had Iceman, so that was good. But that's all I got to say. But tell me what you guys think.